Hey everybody, this is Paige from Mosaic Moments, and today I'm doing a demo on this 3x3 X Factor die. This die actually comes in a set of two. This die here is really a frame die, and you can match it up with the X Factor dies as well. But today I'm going to be using this one to fill up these 4 spaces. So I already placed down the 3x4 X Factor dies, and I have the 4x4 X Factor die in the center. If you want to learn more about using the X Factor dies in general, you can click the link in the top right corner. As you can see, the 3x3 X Factor die has that line in the center, and it is designed to line up with the rest of the X Factor dies as shown here. Today I'm going to be showing an advanced cutting technique, but at home I recommend using photos where your subjects are pretty small. We'll talk about that later in the video. Alright, so now that you've been introduced to the X Factor dies, let's get started with the demo. First, you're going to cut your base pieces. This is the 3x3 die from set A. The base piece helped because the X Factor dies are so thin, the base piece makes it a little bit stronger and less flimsy. Sometimes I get these rough edges on the paper and I use my little chiseler tool, or you can use something similar to get those rough edges off and smooth it out. Now I'm cutting with the 3x3 X Factor die. So basically seen here, you just put it through your die machine and then the die cut comes right out, and it is very thin and flimsy, so be careful. So I cut with the square die from set A 4 times and the 3x3 X Factor die 4 times to fill in the rest of this space. And as shown here, I'm using my repositionable glue to glue down the background pieces on the grid paper. So as you can see, it's pretty easy, and obviously because of the grid paper, everything lines up perfectly. Now, when you add the 3x3 X Factor die, you want to make sure the line is going in the correct direction so it lines up with the rest of the X Factor dies already on your layout. So I'm adding glue, and be careful because it is a very thin cut. So I made sure the diagonal line goes from the top left to the bottom right to make sure it lines up with that 4x4 X Factor die pretty much. And to save time, I did already glue the back of the rest of these, but it's important to know which direction those lines are going. So once you're finished, and I'm getting this last one here, your page should look like this when it's all done. And it actually looks pretty amazing even without the photos, so you can already tell it's going to be a great page in the end. So now I'm going to show you how I plan to cut my photographs. So I am slowing down the video for this to help you understand. So my finger's pointing to these diagonal lines. If you look at the shape, there's all these thick diagonal lines within the design, right? So there's those two here, and then there's that one, this one, and all these other ones, okay? So that's what we're going to be filling in with the photographs. And you want to pay attention to the shape. And you need to know which way the die needs to go. So I'm putting my dies on here in the same way that they're placed on the paper. And I want this one photograph to fill in those 2 spaces. So I'm lining it up exactly as it's shown on the page. So the 3x4 X Factor die is at the bottom, and my photo's going to be cut with that top part, and the top of my photograph is going to be cut with that 3x3 X Factor die. And again, you want to pay attention to which way that die needs to be placed on your photograph. All right, let's get started with the cutting. If you're feeling lost, that's okay. I'm going to be showing this technique multiple times. But for now, I have the 2 dies lined up, and you will absolutely want to use washi tape, which is what I'm using right now, so your dies don't shift through the machine or cut crooked. And here you can see I have a very, very tiny gap between the two dies, so keep it as close as possible and also make sure the two dies are lined up. right next to each other. Okay, then you want to carefully put it into your die machine. And if you need to, I only used 2 pieces of washi tape, but you may need more. Alrighty, so I'm going to peel it up. The washi tape I'm using today was not very easy to peel up at all, so yeah, it's pulling apart my photos, but basically I'm just going to keep each photo together. It did cut through all the way, even though it doesn't look like it in the video, but it did, and I'm just keeping them together so I don't lose the pieces very easily for whenever I do add them to my layout. All right, so I'm bringing the page back so you can see the next part. So I'm going to get this 3x4 die and line it up exactly as it's shown here in the 3x3. So now I know which parts I need to cut this die. So I know the bottom part of the 3x4 die is going on that top part of the photograph, and I'm lining up the 3x3 die right below it. And this one, I'm not going to cut them through at the same time because my subject, his foot is like right on the edge between the two of them. And I don't want his foot to be cut off, so I am going to cut this one separately. But for the most part, you can cut the dies at the same time. I just want to make sure that these cuts are pretty correct. So if you do need to do this, as you can see, I cut with the 3x3 die first. And you probably can't see in the video, but basically it makes that cut line there. And then I know I can place that die right next to it. I'm going to be placing it right up against that line. All right, so I'm just taking my time and making sure it's... You can see the lines where it was cut before, so now I'm lining up the die to those lines. And I'm making sure, I flipped it over to make sure the die's not... If you can see the blade when you flip it over, that means you need to adjust your die because otherwise your cut will be crooked. So I put washi tape on here again and I'm ready to roll it through. So take your time when you're using these dies and make sure that they're cutting through your photo. I have accidentally cut with the dies and then the photo is slightly cut crooked because the die shifted and didn't cover it. All right, so I got that one done. That was the only one where I'm going to be, where I did it, the die, where I cut the dies separately, but the rest of them will all be together. All right, so now I need to do this shape. So look, now the 3x4 die is going horizontally, right? And I have that 3x3 die next to it. All right, so putting the 3x3 die on this side because I want the same photograph in that shape, and then the 3x4 one's going right next to it. And if you look at that center part that's cutting the photograph, that's the exact shape we just saw on the grid paper. Again, I'm using my washi tape. Make sure there's a little bit of a gap, just a tiny gap between the two dies. All right, I had to fix that because it kind of shifted. That's why you may want to use more washi tape. One piece may not be enough. And of course, you want your two dies to line up as close as you can. Okay, so I cut that one through. Now I'm going to peel these dies up. And again, I'm not going to separate the photo for now. I'll wait until I get the page done. But if you looked at it, you probably couldn't see in the video, but it cut in the shape that we saw on the grid paper. So hopefully you're catching on. So just like I'm going to do here, basically you want to make sure when you place your dies on your photograph that the two dies make the shape that you're going to fill on the grid paper. So I'm going to show this one more time in the slower pace. And for these photographs, I did make sure my subjects were small. So see here, my subject, the boy here, he can fit within that little space. And here, I didn't really worry about people for this one. So that's how I am. I don't like cutting through people. So you do want to take some extra time to plan. So before I started this video, I did plan each photograph and saw where they could fit within my X Factor design. So again, this is more of an advanced technique. So if you have been using the X Factor dies for a while and need more of a challenge, this is a great technique for those of you who want to step up your game, right? All right, so I'm going to roll it through the machine. All right, I'm going to peel it up again. And I'm going to keep the photo together so the pieces won't get scrambled together. You know, if I separate these pieces, then I had to figure out where do they belong to which photographs. So to avoid that, you can just keep your photos together and separate them right before you put each little photo on your page. I did just speed up the video, but you can still see the entire process being done. So a lot of you ask about my sandwich. So if you decide to get the Sizzix BigKick, just so you know, all die machines are different. So you definitely want to look at the manufacturer's instructions to know what sandwich to use for your particular machine. But for the Sizzix, I'm using a magnetic plate on the very bottom. And that there's a plate that comes with the Sizzix machine, the base, I think they call it. And so the magnetic plate replaces that one. So that's the very bottom. And then the next thing I'm using is the crease pad. And I'm using the crease pad because I'm cutting photos. And the crease pad is handy because if you're using the plastic plate, your photos get an indent around the edges. And so if you don't like that indent, you can use a crease pad instead. And the key is you do not want to cut into the crease pad. So don't cut into it. So as you can see, I have the photos flipped over so it doesn't cut into the crease pad. So first is the magnetic plate, the crease pad, and then you're going to put in your die facing, the blade facing up, and then your photograph, and your photograph faces towards the die. And the last one is the plastic plate, which you can see mine is all cut up. It looks pretty worn out, and the plastic plates do wear out. They last for quite a while, but eventually you will need to replace them. Some die machines come with a self-healing mat. Self-healing meaning it'll last longer for you. So there's all kinds of die machines out there, and you definitely want to do a little bit of research before purchasing one. I like the Sizzix machine because it's pretty straightforward to use. A lot of people who use our dies also like the Evolution Advanced, which you can adjust it, and it actually comes with a battery motor, so if you don't want to crank it yourself, you can press a button and the die will go through the machine by itself. So there's lots of different die machines out there. All right, so I'm cutting this one, and again, hopefully you're paying attention that every time I cut this, I pay attention to the shape that I want this photo to be on the grid paper. That was my last cut, and now I get to place it on the grid paper. All right, I have my repositionable glue again, and as you can see, there's a good reason why I kept the photo together, and that's so you can see which direction the photos are going and which shape they're creating. So I knew just by looking at this cut where it needed to go on the grid, so I know it'll fit within this space. All right, so now I get to put this one down, and it fits right into the X Factor dies, and that's it. So really, this is the funnest part of the whole thing, is being able to, after you cut everything, which I know that takes more time in this case, but then once you glue it down, it does create an amazing effect. And again, keep these photos together until right before you put it on the grid paper so you know where they need to fit. All right, got the first two, and looking at this one, it's nice to put it in order too if you're going clockwise or counterclockwise on your design. So now I'm putting the next one on. And as you can see, I did specifically cut it so it makes that same shape as what I just placed it in. Okay, speeding things up a little bit because I think you get the idea now, but I'm going to fill in the rest. So yes, as you can see, it was important for me to, when I had to place the dies in a certain position in a certain direction so that when I placed the photos within the X Factor pieces, it would look correct. Otherwise, your subjects would be sideways and you would have to do it over again. So definitely check it twice before you cut your photo. I have a note here. So for the left and right sides of the layout, I used vertical photographs. And for the top and bottom, I used all horizontal photographs. So that'll make it easier for you, hopefully, when you're planning out your page, that your vertical photographs will go on the side and horizontal ones will go on the top and bottom. So you can get those cuts in. Because otherwise you might see they won't fit or something. All right, so the photographs are all placed, and I think this page looks amazing. I felt that the brown triangles just made the page seem unfinished, so I decided to go ahead and add pattern paper. I did cut these with the 3x4 X Factor die. So I'm just quickly going to glue it down with my repositionable glue, and now how a finish looked. And these triangles are actually they're great spaces for adding titles, which I am going to do that once I'm done with the video. And if you saw the front cover of this video, you saw that finished result. All right, if you enjoyed watching this advanced X Factor technique and you like the 3x3 X Factor die, definitely give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe. We put up a new tutorial every week and we don't want you to miss out, so definitely subscribe. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope you enjoy playing around with the X Factor die at home, and I'll see you next time.